crack a croy one with the boys.
Yeah. One, two, three. Da 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 da. That's my.
Woo
Okay, I was gonna say that's my Animal Crossing town theme song. You're welcome. So I'm Alana,
woo! I'm Lauren,
and
and we're
we're
the
the Boy
Croy
Boys,
Boys.
recording this podcast for a second time
Yep,
because we're in isolation and we don't know what we're doing because we're old and we
I'm
don't
not
know.
that old.
We are.
I'm. I was just impatient. It was my
Eh,
bee dog.
we just didn't know what we're doing, but this time we're double recording, which means double the chance of failure. That's how that works.
Are we really a podcast without some audio going horribly wrong?
That's true. Who hasn't lost audio?
Yeah. Now we
Especially
can say we have.
exactly. It's just the growing pains of the podcast,
Hmm.
really. All right, so what we drank when we were on the podcast last time was we had the coconut cola, and I'll give you our list with the coconut cola in it. So number one, we have strawberry mango, lemon, black cherry white claw, ruby grapefruit, passion fruit, pineapple strawberry, berry, pamplemousse, lime, coconut cola. So that's the one that we reviewed yesterday. And then coconut pure, and last, of course, coffee exotica. And so for coconut cola, I gave it a 1.6, and Lauren gave it a 1.5 rating. Have any memories or thoughts you want to share about the coconut cola, Lauren?
It wasn't as bad as I originally thought it would be, and I think the cola really helped versus just having a plain cola flavor.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't that bad. I feel like it had potential. I feel like coconut cola could be like a random seasonal Japanese soda flavor. I wouldn't be
Mm.
surprised if it has been. So it wasn't bad. It was definitely like this could be a real soda flavor. All right, and last week's pick was my pick, and it was Adekan, the very famous Japanese manga. That's not true. It's not that famous, but I feel like it's definitely more popular in Japan than it is in America, especially because the manga it's gotten like three stage plays, one of which just came out last year. So it's a relatively popular manga in Japan. I feel like no one knows it in America, which is to be expected. That's very normal. I feel like it's for a lot of things. And and it's kind of old manga. It started in 2007, and so when I found it, I think it was probably when I was in high school or something like that. Okay, so our Wikipedia summary. So the series follows Shiro Yoshiwara, an eccentric umbrella craftsman, and Kojiro Yamada, a young police officer. The two form an unlikely bond and end up assisting one another with solving mysteries and stopping crime. Shiro's past catches up with him, though, and threatens to harm his newfound friendship and way of life. Like I said before, I kind of found this when I was in high school, and it's kind of just like a fun but kind of dark crime, mystery, drama, with an overarching storyline behind it. And part of the reason that I would say probably the number one reason that I like it so much. But one, I like mystery crime stories like this, so that already had some points going for it for me. But also, I really love the art in this manga. I think it's like the prettiest manga ever made. And it's one of the few mangas that I've ever read that I don't ever want it to be an anime because unless it was like done over like several years, I feel like there's no way that it could do the art justice and it would just look really bad and it would make me cry. So I'm happy that they decided to just turn it into a stage play. I feel like they could do more with that than versus like actual anime. But yeah, so that's one of the things I really like about it. So when reading back when I was younger, I had a different sense of humor, I suppose, and I overlooked a lot more things. And I also feel like, it is over 10 years old, so some of the jokes and the things in it are a product of its time, I would say. So some of it's a bit cringe, especially in the beginning, I would say. Like some of the humor and some of like the, I don't know, fan servicey stuff is kind of weird. It made me feel uncomfortable reading it, even though at the time I don't think I thought much about it. So that was kind of annoying.
I mean,
But
that happens with me a lot. Just like
yeah.
when you first go through it, you kind of ignore it, and then watching back, especially when you know somebody else is gonna watch it
Uh-huh.
or read it,
Yeah.
you start nitpicking at those things.
Yeah. I was like reading it and I was like, one's not gonna like this at all.
Yeah, but that's literally what happens with all my choices.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I thought you would find something interesting in it. Like I
Yeah.
didn't think you would like a lot of it, but I thought you would find something unique about it because I think it's a really unique manga. There's not really anything you can compare it to. I mean, there's bits and pieces that you can take from it, but I think overall it's a super unique environment because to me it almost comes off as a steampunk type of thing, but like a Japanese version of steampunk. So you have this weird mix of like old stuff and new old stuff, but in like new mentality. So you have it's still set in like an old time. There's no electronics or anything like that, but the things that are being made and the scenes that you're being given are so intricate and so big. It's like there's no way that they could really exist in the past. And so they're just so grand that it's like, well, this could only like exist in some sort of weird dimension. So it's like it's kind of like this weird, really weird and almost off-putting world to begin with. And so I think it's just a really, really unique world, and in general, I like the characters, or at least I find them very interesting. All the main characters I think are really interesting. Overall, I really like this manga. But the other thing that I think that it has a problem with is the female characters are done relatively poorly. There are better ones. I feel like as you get along in the manga, like near where they're at now because the manga's still ongoing. But like all it has same face syndrome, which is annoying. So all the girls basically look the same. Doesn't matter what age they are. They could be like 16 or 40 and they look exactly the same. Basically, they have the same hair color, the hair, same hairstyle, same eye shape, same body shape. They all look exactly the same. Whereas at least like the men, they have different bodies and different hairstyles and stuff, so you can tell them apart really easily. Whereas the girls, I'm like, they'll bring up, like, when they brought up some of the old characters, I'm like, I don't even know who this is. This could be
Mhm.
literally anyone. Because I'm like, they all look the same. But that's my other biggest complaint. But overall, I just find it to be such a weird, unique manga that I can overlook a lot of its flaws. So I enjoy this manga very much. And that's my review.
I mean, I definitely could appreciate the manga, but I can't really say it was that much of a positive experience for me. Mostly because it's like has pretty depressing, I don't know, outlook
Hmm.
about like their world, and reading it all at once
Yeah. Yeah, I wish that we
was
had more
definitely a
time.
lot.
Because did you end up reading to the 15th chapter, or did you read?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Wait, the
It's
15th, maybe.
oh, not
Yeah.
the 15th story.
It didn't seem to quite have that many kind of lighthearted, like kind of breaths of fresh air. I think they tried for that
Hmm.
whenever the two main characters would meet in the beginning.
Yeah,
I feel like half the time it came off as cringy.
yeah, yeah. I feel like
And
like I said, I feel like they got it better in other parts, but yeah, it's definitely the beginning parts are super cringy.
yeah, I didn't really like the main characters enough for me to be kind of attached to the story. There's a good chance that it would have changed as I read on, but based on what I read, I don't know, I wasn't very attached to like the grander plot that was going on because it was more episodic where they're solving mysteries, and I don't really like crime procedurals that much, and I don't like episodic stories unless they're comedies typically. I probably wouldn't have kept reading it. Maybe I would have come back in a week or two,
Oh, yeah.
and when I remembered it existed.
Oh, sorry. I think this manga, it's a monthly manga anyway, because I've read this story for so many years. I feel like I've known this story for so long that I'm more attached to it. I definitely could understand the
And I
shortcomings of reading it too fast.
And I do think that the artwork is really impressive and definitely intricate and beautiful in that way. I felt like it was a lot for my eyes and processing. And I think, other kind of comics can be, I don't know, beautiful in a simple way too. I just
Yeah,
want to put that
sure.
out there. It's definitely impressive, like how much was done,
Yeah.
which is probably why it takes a month. Definitely a lot of hard work went into artwork.
I was gonna say possibly the idea is too, like since it is a monthly publication, I'm sure people reread the chapters. So I'm sure they get a lot more out of seeing the art several
Yeah,
times versus us trying to cram in like however many like 20
yeah.
chapters, 20 of the 60 chapters that exist in like 2 days. So
Because I don't think that I was really trying to appreciate all the artwork. I was mostly just trying to make sense of it.
yeah.
So I did read the 15th story, actually today. So that's the thing that we didn't do in our other recording.
Yeah.
And I did take the time to look at it, but I didn't really do that the first time
Yeah.
that I was trying to read it. So, that's probably a problem, like, for why I didn't quite enjoy it as much as you did.
Your criticisms are valid.
Thanks.
So we're going to talk about our favorite stories and our least favorite stories. My favorite story was a chapter we were just talking about, or the story we were just talking about, which was story 15, the fog of Yento police station. And so that one was my favorite. So basically it follows Sao Tome and Yamada. And so, you know, they're going to this village because they hear about this string of murders that are happening in this kind of like weird religious village town. And so you have the tree people and the noble people. And so like the noble people basically because of their religion, the tree people are their slaves. So these murders are going on, and I won't get to the whole thing because the only reason last time I did it was because you didn't know what it was about. But I really like the story because I feel like the plot twists were set up better than I would say all the chapters that we've read for the most part. Like there were enough hints that which in some ways you could say that were kind of fed to us, but for the most part they gave us enough hints to at least have some ideas of who did it before they revealed who was the actual person who did it. Which is something that I appreciate because I feel like with some murder mysteries or crime shows, they have these plot twists, but there's no way like you could have ever figured it out. So it's like, what's the point of all of this if there's no way you could understand how it could happen? So I think for the most part, it was revealed enough in a way because it ended up being the murder ended up being the eldest child of the high priestess or whatever, who ended up actually being not her daughter, but being her son. And so, they kind of set it up in the beginning because, like, it's like, well, why is the younger child being the one who's going to succeed her and not the eldest child and stuff. And so you have that weird thing going on. And then you also have, like, this weird, like, guy who's hanging around and stuff. And then you also have the guy who's, like, getting blamed for the murders. And, like, they set up, like, the whole thing about the tree people and how their thing is that, like, their number one rule is like you don't put blame on other people, and that I feel like helps to motivate their anger as well when it goes like through the story and stuff. And then the twist with the weird guy who was hanging around is actually their father who got the priestess's children's father or whatever who ended up getting kicked out. And that was like, oh, and then also most of all, you get to learn about Sao Tome a little bit and how awesome he is and his whole thing. And he had a really awesome chance to shine. And I feel like there's just a lot of good things going on in the story. And I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like it was the best story of the ones that we read. I can't remember all the chapters from when I read them, but this is the best one that we read.
I didn't really include that in my list, like after I read it,
Uh huh.
because you did explain it to me, so I
Yeah.
felt like I didn't really experience it the way it should have been
Yeah. Sorry.
experienced, or it was meant to be experienced.
Yeah.
I felt like the person who was the killer wasn't that interesting, actually, but their mom was. I felt like it wasn't disturbing enough. Like I wasn't really interested in that person. But the mom was kind of interesting in her motivations and actions and just how it was revolved around that religion.
No, it's fun. Yeah, it wasn't so much that he was an interesting character. I just think that it was set up in a way like that's yeah. But I just think overall it was the most interesting story in terms like because we don't see the son that much anyway. So I don't think
Yeah.
he doesn't play that much of a role. Because if anything, it's almost weirdly it's almost a mixture of like the town story and kind of like what's going on with them, kind of Sao Tome's story as well. Even though I would agree with you, I think his motivations were kind of weak, but I don't, I don't, it's not the worst motivations. I was like, all right, that's fine. It wasn't so out there that I was like, that's.
And it actually did end on a hopeful note.
What is your favorite story, Lauren? Even though I already know it.
You remember?
Yeah, it was the Flower of the Soul, right?
Well, no.
Oh,
Wait, was it?
oh no! It's the first one, right? The first one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, never
I
mind.
put down
Then
the story numero uno,
yes,
Bride Bridge. That's where we first meet the two boys.
Shiro and
Shiro's hanging out
Ochan.
without any underwear, and he has a baby in his hands. And
Why'd
he's
you say it like
well, he's hanging out with his neighbor and a baby. His neighbor, she like takes in babies that are like abandoned in an alleyway, and you know there's this bridge that if you walk over it with someone you're holding hands you'll be together, and there's like this ghostly figure coming out at nights, and that's what Kojiro, yeah,
that? Yeah,
whatever.
Kojiro.
That's what he's investigating, and then it turns out that she's killing the babies and taking the money that's wrapped around them so
Yeah,
that she can get her boyfriend out of trouble so that they could get married. And
yep,
I thought it was a good kind of just simple twist, you know.
yeah, yeah. It was.
It was disturbing in the right ways.
I think it kind of sets up for the fact that all the characters, even when you think that they're good, a lot of times they end up being bad
Yeah.
anyway.
Uh,
Yeah, I didn't have any honorable mentions, but you can go ahead and
I have two
say.
honorable mentions. The runner-up is chapter 14, To Benita.
Yeah, I was saying if I was gonna choose an honorable mention, that would probably be the one that I would choose.
So it was about this famous singer slash songwriter and about this girl who's an impersonator of her because they look alike, but
Mm.
also a lot of people say that the impersonator sings better than the original singer. So the singer wants to write more songs, so she asked the impersonator to take over singing for her in like her concerts so that she could just focus on what she really wants to do, which is write songs. But she kind of looks possessed when she's writing these songs. When she says that she's done writing songs, the impersonator kind of freaks out, and she says that the impersonator is pitiful while she's having this breakdown. And the impersonator thought that it was an insult, but really she was just trying to show sympathy for her. So the impersonator like pushes her into the room and locks the door, and when she opens it up, it looks like the singer hit her head on some steps. She fell down in an unrelated incident, and she's alive.
Mhm.
And the original singer, she just popped right back up, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Oh, what a thrilling experience!" Nobody turned out to be truly despicable and evil,
Yeah.
which was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it was a nice little story. No one died.
Nope,
This is a good time, I guess. Relatively in the
relatively.
stories.
All right, so my final runner-up was "Flower of the Soul." which is chapter 6. I actually wrote next to it when I tried to remember the chapters, Rehab for Crimies. So basically, it's centered around. So he's creating like this rehabilitation kind of thing where he's trying to get these people who just got out of jail skills to get a job and support themselves once they go out into the real world. This guy is basically kind of doubting himself, kind of, in that he's doing this just because he wants someone to depend on him and to make him feel better about himself that way. And because he's doing it for these, quote, selfish reasons, that he's not really doing that much good. It was nice that there was this one old guy, and he was there in the beginning with just a flower bud. And then when he's having that breakdown, that old guy shows up again, and he has a flower, and then he just comes over and hugs the guy. Might have been the nicest moment that I read in this manga. And then, we have a picture of him at the end of the story, and it looks like he's in a Butler cafe, but he's holding a flower, and he just looks so happy.
Yeah, he's found his purpose in his life.
Yeah. And there's some murders going on.
Yeah, but who cares?
Who cares?
Now let's do our least favorite stories. My least favorite episode or story or whatever was the 7th one, the Spring Beast. So in this one, Shira's like walking down the road. There's like a lady, she needs help or something. He's like falling in her, and then like, he gets jumped or whatever, but he knew he was gonna get jumped. And then like, he takes off this girl's kimono, and it was really weird. She had all these piercings on her body, and then he goes away, and then the rest of the crime people go, and see her there, and they're like, "Why are you naked?" And he's like, she's like, "There's this dude or whatever." And then the lady with all the piercings on her bodies, she's like, "I like Shiro now," and that was the end of the story. And I didn't like it because it was a nothing story. It should have been thrown away. Didn't make sense that it was an official numbered story. Should have just been an extra, and it made me upset that I had to read it.
Right. So my least favorite story was also the Spring Beast. Again, it was kind of a nothing story. Like, that summary is really all you need. You know what? Maybe if we got to know the society thing more.
Yeah.
And about their struggle, but really, we just met the one girl and heard rumors about it.
That would have been more interesting. We were talking about in the Deleted Dead podcast that perhaps maybe the manga writer or whatever had a bigger idea for this story, and that's why it was a numbered story, even though it read much more like an extra.
Yeah.
Because then also she shows up later in like another chapter randomly.
Yeah, and that's the most offensive thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not in its own contained chapter.
Yeah.
It bleeds through to the rest of this manga.
So I'll do my 2 honorable mentions. For one, I got Juxtaposed Mirror. This was the second story, and the reason I didn't like it was I feel like it was just too extra, making all the characters evil. So that one story was about these 2 twins. There was like the pretty twin and the ugly twin, and every time the ugly twin would fall in love with a guy, the guy would die, and it turns out it was a servant. Ugly twin would get angry or whatever and be mean to the servant whenever she would fall in love with a guy, so he would kill them. And so basically, and kind of part of the other part of the twist is that the ugly twin, she got all angry and stuff, and so they kind of put her in the beginning. They kind of make her seem like she's this meek, nice, kind of shy and awkward character, but also she's like crazy evil she gets crazy angry for some reason. And that just like seems so out of nowhere to the point that I just didn't understand it. It was a weird character choice, and I didn't like it as a second story because I feel like it, to me, of all the characters that end up being evil in some form of or another, it was the least relatable, and it just like really came out of nowhere.
I actually like that the ugly sister was mean because I feel like it was kind of a double twist that way. Because there was a ugly one and a pretty one, and the pretty one was mean, and then the ugly one, yeah, was did seem meek at first, and you would have thought that she was nice, that she had these servants that she didn't think very much of. I could see where that comes from.
Okay, my other least favorite honorable mention was in fact Flower of the Soul. And that's because specifically the murder side story, not the main story. The main story was actually fine. It was just kind of muddied a little bit with the random murder because it was just like this random one of the random criminals, like two of them, one the drawing guy, and he would tell the one guy to murder people so he could draw it, and then it was like kind of weird. And then Henri, Shiro's brother, kind of he's like he's in disguise or whatever, and at
I
some
think
point, huh?
I think Henri showing up was fine.
Oh, that the Henri part was fine. It was just because he played a role in the main story a little bit too, because he showed up.
And it
But
kind of explained the priest guy's attachment to his brother, and he
yeah,
was projecting that on Donnery.
yeah, exactly. I think that was really that was fine. Like I don't have so much problem with Honor. It was just that Honor was there, and then he literally ended up killing the guy, and they didn't know that he killed him, and they thought Henri died, and he because there was murders going on or whatever, and they thought Henri was caught up with the murders, or he got killed. I don't think he knew he was murdering people. He just got killed them because that's what Henri does sometimes.
Yeah.
So it was just like so nothing. It was like I guess they kind of had to add it to the thing because it's a murder mystery story. It was just really random, but the main story was fine.
Yeah, I just ignored it. What can I say? My honorable mention for the worst story was the side story, Flower of Reach. And it's because I felt like this was another nothing story. It was just about these two girls that were beautiful and they had a flower garden. And it turns out they're old ladies. And the butler guy, he was killing people. And he doesn't like when women are independent because his wife left him or something.
hmm
And he also hates these women, but he like said they're dependent on him, I guess.
Yeah.
And I forget why he was killing still.
Yeah, so I think it was this crime syndicate stuff. There was like crime syndicate.
Oh, right. So
Yeah,
again, nothing story. I don't remember what happened. It
yeah.
wasn't quite that disturbing. Just another woman hating man. Am I right, ladies? Am I right?
uh, anyway, I was like, well, at least this one was an extra, so I wasn't that offended by it. So I was like,
Yeah.
so my best boy, number one best boy in the stories, I chose Sao Tome Mitsuhiko, the one of the police officer people. I don't know exactly what his title is. He's not the
He's
police officer.
vice chief. Chief.
Vice chief. And so he's my favorite because I feel like he is really good at his job. He's got the passion, and he's also I found his jokes to be legitimately funny. In the fog of the Gento police station. That was really his chance to shine. The funniest were in that chapter. I talked to you about it before, but like the part where he did his JoJo pose while they were all trying to attack Yamada, that caught me off guard, so I laughed at that. And then there was another part where he gave like somebody some massage tickets or something, and that caught me off
Mm-hmm.
guard too. And it was just like little things, like his jokes. They weren't cringy in that way. Like they might be cringy to you, but they were pure. They were pure-hearted cringe versus like weird pervy
Yeah. Yeah.
cringe,
I guess I
which
agree there.
yeah, which I appreciate. And also, he kind of sets him up to kind of be like this like freaky old guy, and he's like, oh, he doesn't know how to hold a sword, and he doesn't really know how to fight or whatever. But there's a point where they get ambushed in the story 15. And then he's like, I'm really good at martial arts, but nobody, I guess, knows that he's good at martial arts because, like, Yamato comes up and he's like, why is there this pile of, like, passed out people? And he's like, I don't know. I guess they just tripped into me. And it's like, wow, you really got lucky. And then also, like, kind of in his backstory, he used to also be, like, a pretty boy and stuff. And so like and I feel like maybe if he took care of himself, he still could be a pretty boy, because or maybe only women are allowed to be pretty for eternity. I don't know in this world. But the point is,
No, because then they have to cake makeup on their face and then they die.
yeah, well, yeah, maybe that. But there are some characters that are like older that, like I said, still look like the 16-year-old characters. My point is that he's not that old. I think he's like 44 or something. He's 40 something.
That's
Anyway,
true.
he's
He
not that
doesn't seem
old.
that old.
Even though they make him seem like he's like 70 for some
Yeah.
reason. But I think he's a good mixture of comic relief and also a good character, like as in like morally good, and also a talented character. And so that's why I like him the best.
Best boy is Subarota, and he's the blood sworn brother of Kojiro, the policeman,
Yeah,
and he's also a policeman, but
yeah.
he's not that good at his job.
He's not
And
good at
everybody hates
anything.
him. Huh?
He's not good at anything. That's
Yeah, yeah.
his backstory.
And I feel like he's unappreciated
Hmm.
by the characters in his world and also by people, by the readers of this manga. I feel like he just doesn't belong. I feel like he's a shonen boy in a shoujo world. I think he's pretty funny, and he has his spiky hair, and he just seems like a shonen protagonist, or at least the friend of a shonen protagonist.
Hmm. Anyway, but I do like him, and I like his relationship with Kojiro. I feel like their relationship is supposed to be like a foil, or kind of like supposed to be compared to Henri and Shiro's relationship, because they're also sworn slash blood brothers or whatever. So I feel like he has his important role to play. So my runner up for best boy is Yamada Kojiro, police boy himself, young policeman himself. He's uh, a really good, morally good character. Even though his weird obsession with Shiro wearing underwear sometimes is a bit much, and he kind of needs to let that go.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to know when to quit, but I think that's just part of his personality. He sees a challenge and he wants to rise up to it, I guess, even though it's not worth it. And I feel like he's just a pure-hearted man. All he wants in life is for cats to love him, even though they all hate him. And even though I talked about this in the Dead podcast, but it's heavily implied that he has some sort of supernatural ability, because he is very, very strong and is able to like hold his own in fights that Shiro and Henri can. He's just, he's just a good character all around, and I enjoy his presence. And I hope one day that cats will, maybe there will be one cat that will like him.
So so my runner up is also Kojiro. Just a good dude, positive attitude, good anime protagonist. So yeah, I had Satome, the second runner up. I thought he was kind of cool, different kind of character, and also again one of the least problematic. So yeah. And then my third runner up is Sakihana Rurimaru. And he's the police chief. I thought it was just, a chill dude. Again, least problematic. That's it.
Now it's time for our koi boys. The boys are left a bad taste in our mouths, just like the famous seltzer water. All right, so my koi
White
boy,
Claw. Sorry.
or well, yeah, White Claw. All right, uh, so my koi boy, is Shinzo. Shinzo, who is Henri's assistant dude. And so my reasoning was just because I didn't understand his motivations. I don't understand why he helps Henri. Henri doesn't understand why he helps him. Why Shinzo helps him. He's like, "Are you in love with me?" And Shinzo's like, "No, you're disgusting. You disgust me." And it's like, all right, then why are you doing this? And like, if they gave a little bit of an explanation, like they were like, Henri I think Henri's gonna, he's super powerful and he's gonna like rule the world, and I wanna be there when he ascends the throne or whatever. But instead, it's just like I don't know, and that annoys me, and I don't appreciate it because I don't understand his motivations for doing things. I'm like, why are you doing all this for Henri? Especially because Henri's a freak, and I'm like, who's the type of
Listen,
person who's
he's
gonna?
living in a freak world.
I guess. But
You
Henri's
don't
like
know
a
what
freak among
trauma has
freaks.
incurred.
He's a freak among freaks. Everyone thinks he's a freak. Everyone calls him names because they're like, Henri. They call him bad words that I can't say on this podcast because I don't want to curse and say bad words about him. And they're always making faces and trying to kill him because he's a freak. Anyway, my
What
point is
about
that, huh?
what about all the people that love him for his freakness, for being
Yes,
freak,
there are. Yeah, I guess you either love him or you hate him in this world. Sure.
or you feel neutral about him but follow him anyway?
Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. See, I think that's the problem because
Listen,
he set
he's
up.
just damaged.
All right, sure, but they set him up where you either have to love him or you hate him. You want him to die, and then you have Shinzo, and it's just like, well, it's fine if you're neutral, but why are you neutral? I just need a reason. I need a decent reason, and I would be okay. But otherwise, it don't make any sense.
All right. So my croy boy is Henri.
Yeah.
Uh,
Out of all the
uh,
characters, I would guess you hate Henri the most.
I think the main thing is that I feel as though the readers, the fan base, would love Henri so much,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's warranted. I don't particularly like his type of character that so often shows up in anime. I guess his motivations are revealed even more as the chapters go, and
Yeah.
he's probably kind of a he probably helps out the good guys because he is protecting Shiro or whatever. But he
Uh,
also just does what?
I was gonna say I don't want to say he helps out the good guys. But he just if you happen to be helpful in what he's doing, he's gonna be nice to
Mhm.
you. He's just. But the one thing that I will say about Henri, even though I know you wouldn't like him just because of who Henri is, I still feel like he's an important character because he like even though I agree, like some of the things he does is like very extra to the point where, like I said, it does remind me of Hisoka from Hunter x Hunter, but I understand his motivations for the most part. Yeah, so I didn't have any honorable mentions. Do you have any?
Nope.
All right. So I would say if you like crime procedural kind of murder mystery type things, yes. I think that is definitely something I would recommend to someone. Because like I said, I feel like it's very unique. But I'd also probably warn someone that it is old and there are some cringy stuff in the beginning, but it gets better because I do think that as it got on, like as I kept reading, I was like I feel like there was less cringy stuff, or at least at the very least, it was just more kind of just like plain fan service. That I was like, it's fine, it's whatever, versus like weird choices that they decided to make. Overall, would I recommend this to a random person? Probably not. I would have to know like their taste in animes and mangas before I was like, yeah, you should read this manga. Like I'd have to know what they like first. So in general, no. If you like crime, kind of darker things, try it out. It's a bunch of pretty boys running around. The other thing is that they're always running around in heels. They all have heels on. All of them, all the time. Running around in heels, doing crime, solving crimes. That's all.
So I don't know if I would recommend it that much out of the blue. Like if somebody asked me for like a manga to read, I probably wouldn't have suggested that. I don't know. Maybe if they said specifically like a dark crime procedural type, I would say, yeah, well, you could try it out. If they came up to me and asked me specifically about the manga, about whether or not they should read it, I'd be like, oh yeah, yeah, it could be for you. But I also didn't read that much of it, and I also would recommend trying to read it all at once.
Yeah, take your time reading it.
It's fine. It was fine, but I don't know if I Okay, I probably wouldn't have elected to read it
Yeah.
on my lonesome.
All right. So
Ugh.
in the Dead podcast, we chose our next Croy and our next Croy. All right, sure. So our next one is going to be the Tangerine Croy. Chose that on the Dead podcast, and then
Mm.
for our next one, it's gonna be Lauren's pick next week, and it's gonna be Sweet Life with Zach and Cody.
Okay.
Dun, 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 dun. They play that song at my work sometimes, the Friend song.
Okay. Well, the thing that just came to mind
hmm
is that the saddest thing about recording like remotely and not
Yeah.
together is that this mic won't pick up my beatboxing.
Oh.
You know, I keep almost beatboxing, but I just remember that it's pointless.
Anyways.
I mean, do you really beatbox if there's no one here to hear you? Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Okay. All right. So that's the end of our podcast as we try to the zombie of our dead podcast and try to
Sings Amazing Grace to us.
yeah, I guess. So that's it this week. And I'm Alana,
And I'm Lauren.
and we're
The
the Croy
Croy
Boys.
Boys. Make sure to subscribe, review, email us at thecroyboys@gmail.com if you so desire for recommendations of how to make it our podcast better. And, whatever else.
Yeah, send us some memes. Don't or do.
I
Yeah. Anyway, so instead of Croy's New Dawn, mostly, and it's definitely not because I don't want to do Croy's New Dawn. We're gonna sing. We're gonna lead us out with Amazing Grace, in a memorial of our dead podcast. May its memory last in our hearts forever, and let us learn from the mistakes of our past
mm,
to live in a better and brighter future.
yes. Well said, Alana. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you.
In 1, 2, and go.
Big grace, how sweet the
The
sound
sound
that
that
saved
saved
a
a
wretch
wretch
like
like me.
me. I
I once
once
was
was lost,
lost,
but
but now I'm found.
was
Was blind,
but
but now
I
I see. Thanks.